Donald Trump called the Epstein files controversy a hoax. While survivors of Epstein's abuse were literally speaking out, begging for justice, Trump dismissed it as fake news. These women said, "We are not a hoax. We are human beings."
President Trump, you have so much influence and power in this situation. Please use that influence and power to help us, because we need it now and this country needs it now.
Mr. President Donald J. Trump, I am a registered Republican, not that that matters because this is not political. However, I cordially invite you to the Capitol to meet me in person so you can understand this is not a hoax.
So this is a Democrat hoax that never ends. You know, it reminds me a little of the Kennedy situation. We gave him everything over and over again, more and more and more, and nobody's ever satisfied. From what I understand, I could check, but from what I understand, thousands of pages of documents have been given. But it's really a Democrat hoax because they're trying to get people to talk about something that's totally irrelevant to the success that we've had as a nation since I've been president.
And here's the thing. If Trump truly believes it's a hoax, then prove it. Release the files. Let the American people see the truth, because right now his refusal is starting to backfire badly. When you have Democratic Representative Ro Khanna, Libertarian Republican Thomas Massie, and yes, even Marjorie Taylor Greene all demanding transparency, you know Trump is in real political trouble.
Every Republican should be able to sign on to this. And that's the real hoax, that they're afraid to sign on to it because somebody who is a real coward from one of the Trump admin officials came out and called this a hostile act against the Trump administration. And I take very big offense to that because I put my life and my fortune on the line fighting to get that man elected. And whoever said that has their job because of people like me that fought all the horrible Republicans that stabbed him in the back after January 6th. And I was one of those that fought on the front lines and said, no, he is the leader of our party. He is the president, and we're going to make him president again. Well, that coward attacked me and attacked anybody else and called it a hostile act. The hostile act was Jeffrey Epstein raping 14-year-old girls. That was the hostile act, and it's not a hoax.
Every Republican should sign on to this bill to release the Epstein files. But instead, some Trump world officials are calling it a hostile act against the Trump administration. A hostile act? No. The hostile act was Jeffrey Epstein raping underage girls. That's the crime. That's the scandal. And it's not a hoax. Marjorie Taylor Greene, one who has been one of Trump's most loyal foot soldiers, one of the faces of MAGA, is now breaking with him. On Epstein, on foreign wars, on what she's now calling America only, Greene is stepping out of Trump's shadow.
As you're questioning, why can't they just name the names? What you don't realize is they just told their stories of being raped and being abused, being victimized, being manipulated, being coerced, and basically held in a prison of captivity of sexual abuse while they were young teenagers and extremely young, vulnerable women. And in Jeffrey Epstein's home and the places they went with him, they saw the most powerful people in the world in his pictures, and they saw him with those people. Can you imagine how terrifying it would be to name names like that? These are some of the richest, most powerful people in the world that could sue these women into poverty and homelessness. Yeah, it's a scary thing to name names, but I will tell you, I'm not afraid to name names. And so if they want to give me a list, I will walk in that Capitol on the House floor and I'll say every damn name that abused these women. I can do that for them.
She isn't suddenly a hero. Greene's politics are still extreme and dangerous. But in this one fight, she's standing with survivors and against Trump. And that's a massive fracture inside the GOP. Here's another point. Of the entire Republican caucus, the only ones willing to sign on to this bill, aside from Massie, are women. Greene, Lauren Boebert, Nancy Mace. 3 women out of over 220 Republicans in the House. Representation matters. Diversity matters, because sometimes it takes women to say the obvious. Ending child trafficking and exposing predators is not optional. And Greene has gone even further. She's offered to read the names of alleged abusers on the House floor if the government continues to block the files. Why? Because members of Congress are protected under the Constitution's speech or debate clause. That means they can't be sued for defamation for what they say in session. That is extraordinary, and it shows how serious this fight has become. But let's not lose sight of what's at stake here. The survivors. These women have been failed again and again. Failed in 2008 when Epstein got a sweetheart deal. Failed in the Maxwell trial. Failed when their testimony was used and then buried. Failed when their abuser ended up in a cushy jail or walked free while they lived with lifelong trauma. This isn't just about politics. It's about whether our government chooses to protect powerful men or stand with victims.
One thing that they said that they are willing to do if these documents don't get released is compile their own, basically, list of people around Jeffrey Epstein and release that. You actually said tonight that you have a plan to potentially help them with that.
Yeah, so the survivors said that they had decided to compile their own list, but the reality is if they try to release that list, they're going to be sued into homelessness. They will be attacked. They will have death threats. And so what my colleague Marjorie Taylor Greene volunteered to do, and I've volunteered to do as well, is to read that list on the floor of the House of Representatives, because our founders put into the Constitution speech or debate immunity, which says that we can't be prosecuted for what we say on the floor of the House. So we're willing to help those survivors get those names out there. And as my colleague Ro Khanna has said, we trust the public to determine who were donors to the Epstein Scholarship Fund and who were users of the women who were exposed to sexual abuse, to differentiate between those two groups of people.
Congressman Khanna, do you support that, reading the names from these women on the House floor?
I do, but I don't think it needs to come to that. I mean, there shouldn't be burdened to have to come up with the list. You know, one of the things that struck me is some of the survivors said that they themselves had not seen the files. One person pleaded with America saying she wants to try to understand her own memories and she wants to see these files to be able to piece that together. Look, this was such an emotional moment that after I spoke, after the survivors, Marjorie Taylor Greene came over and gave me a hug. I mean, people should have seen the humanity there. And I don't know, after hearing those women, why we just don't release the files. I mean, it actually would make the president look good. He could come out and say, no other president has released the files. I'm releasing the files. My focus right now, and I think anyone who was at that press conference, is how do we get justice and closure for those survivors?
Every single Democrat in the House has signed on to this bill. Every single one. Republicans now have a choice: stand with Trump or stand with the victims. Greene may be one of the loudest voices in MAGA, but even she's saying, this cannot be buried. And that tells you just how big this fight is. Because unless we learn from this history, unless we hold predators accountable, unless we shine a light on the Epstein files, monsters like him will rise again.